Hi friends, Krista here. Thanks for stopping by Books and Jams. It is time today to talk about all the books that I read in the month of June. And let me tell you, there are a lot of them. I think the total is 21 books that I read in the month of June, which is just insanity. That's so much. But it was the amazing readathon, which I was having so much fun as a Pathfinder. I did read for all 10 of the prompts, just not in the correct order, which is fine. I really enjoyed participating in that readathon. Part of the amazing readathon is a face-off weekend where you're just supposed to read as much as you can, and I vlogged that weekend reading 6 books, and so I am not going to be talking about these books today. I will link the vlog in the description below, but they are The Amazing Mrs. Polifax, the second book in the Mrs. Polifax series by Dorothy Gilman, which is about a woman in her 60s who kind of by accident joins the CIA, and this is her second mission. A lot of fun. I guess I am talking about them a little bit. The Princess and the Goblin by George MacDonald, middle grade fantasy that I did not really enjoy. The Cellist of Sarajevo by Stephen Galloway, which takes place in Bosnia during the war in Bosnia, and we follow 4 different characters. It was heavy and important, but not my favorite read. The Girl Who Reads on the Metro by Christine Fury, which I didn't really like at all. 2 stars. I can't even tell you anything about it. I didn't love that one. Days at the Morisaki Bookshop by Satoshi Yagasawa. Enjoyed this one. Was just like the title says. It follows a young woman whose uncle runs the Morisaki Bookshop, and she goes to the bookshop to live for a little while she kind of gets her life in order and falls in love with reading and people at the bookshop. It was sweet. It was a good story. And then I did read the 2 Mrs. Abbotts that weekend as well. It's not exactly a short book, but this is the 3rd book in this series by D.E. Stevenson. A lot of fun, but not my favorite of the series. I definitely liked books 1 and 2 more than this one. So those are the 6 books I read during Face Off weekend. I do have 2 more that I'm not really going to talk about at all because they are part of my 5-star predictions. I have All the Colors of the Dark I read in May, and then in June I did complete Brave by Misu Andrews and Theo of Golden by Alan Levi. And I said I wanted to get these read before my birthday, and I did. I'm very proud of myself. The video didn't come out in time for my birthday, which was on the 7th, but I did get them read before the 7th. So I accomplished that goal, but I will be filming that video very soon and get that 5-star prediction follow-up out for you. And then I will talk about all the rest of them because I don't know that they made it into any videos. Some did. But first off, I will start with the read-along that I did with Sarah. Sarah from Sarah's Nightstand and I are doing a read-along of the Ember and the Ashes series by Sabaa Tahir. This is the first book, and it was a reread for me, and I loved it just as much as I loved the first one. It is set in a fantasy world that's very much like ancient Rome in a lot of ways. It's brutal, and it's a hard life that's represented here, but I really love our main characters of Laia and Elias and their stories. Laia, she and her brother live with their grandparents, and her house gets raided at the very beginning by a mask and some soldiers. Her brother gets captured, and she goes on a journey to try to find the rebels and join them so that she can get her brother released from prison. And then we follow Elias, who is a student at the military academy, Blackcliff, something like that. And he's very, very good, and yet isn't very content with things as they are in this world. These 2 stories intersect and goes from there, and I'm very excited to dive into A Torch Against the Night. I gave this 5 stars when I first read it, and I kept it the same reading it through the second time. There's time to join in if you really are interested at all in trying out a YA fantasy series. It's a good entry point into fantasy, but it is pretty brutal. I will give you that warning. Not extremely graphic, but it's just a brutal world. And I've said brutal way too many times, but we will be talking about A Torch Against the Night in July, the end of the month. Next up, I'll talk about my 2 Patreon reads. My Patreon pick for June was book 3 in the Timeless series. This is actually book 4 that I have out from the library, but it's my placeholder, so I don't forget to talk about this one. Book 3 was called For a Lifetime, and this series, the Timeless series, is a Christian fiction, historical fiction with a little bit of, I guess it's sci-fi. Time travel is sci-fi, right? But it's mostly historical fiction, and I forget what they're called, but each of the women that we follow, our main characters in each of the books, has this gift, if you will, where they spend the day in one timeline, and when they go to sleep, they wake up in another timeline until their 21st or 25th birthday, when they need to decide which timeline they're going to stay in. So it's a little bit different. We're following 2 different timelines throughout the course of the book. And in book 3 that I read, which is not this one, but For a Lifetime, we followed a set of twins, 2 girls, who were traveling between the same 2 timelines. So they were sisters and twins in both timelines. And one of the timelines was Salem, Massachusetts during the witch trials, which is just a crazy and interesting time to read about anyways. I also really love the way Gabrielle Meyer weaves faith into her stories. It feels realistic. It doesn't feel overly spiritualized or conversations about God and with God that don't feel real. They do feel very realistic. So I do love this series very, very much. I don't own any of them yet. I can see myself returning to this series because I love historical fiction and I do love the faith elements in there. And it's just such a unique idea, and each book is a little bit different than the last. So it's been a lot of fun, and I look forward to continuing in July with book 4, which is why I have it checked out from the library. So that is For a Lifetime was my Patreon pick. And my Patreon book club book for the month of June was The God of the Woods by Liz Moore. I'm so glad I read this. I read this in New York when I was up at my mom's house for a few days. And I really, really enjoyed this literary mystery. It's not a thriller. It's not super fast paced. It's really a character study of this wealthy family who's pretty messed up, and the story of their daughter who goes missing while at this camp in the Adirondacks, which is also in New York. So it's kind of fun. It's pretty, not close to where I am, but I've been to the Adirondacks many times. I really enjoyed this story. It does hop around in timeline quite a bit. I listened to it on audio, and I listened in long chunks, which I think helped me to track with it and stay on top of where things were. I know I had talked with other people who read it in shorter chunks or didn't really get along with the audiobook at all because it took a minute every time it would change perspective or change timeline to figure out where we were. I didn't have that problem, but I understand how people could, because every chapter does jump around. You're with different people, you're following different timelines. There are a lot of people who are disgusting, just make really bad choices. There are others who you're kind of rooting for a little bit. So the girl who went missing years ago, her brother went missing as well. So we're following both of those mysteries as this story unfolds. And some of the characters, some of the main players are the same in both of them. We're also following one of the detectives who's a new detective, Judita. And Judy is a female in a mostly male-dominated police force, and has to fight against the patriarchy. She's really good at her job, but also new at it. She just doesn't have a lot of experience yet. So it was interesting. There were a lot of layers. Our conversation about this was so good. I really loved discussing this with everybody. So that was my Patreon book club for the month of June. Let's do the NetGalley. I did already talk about my NetGalley books as well in the month of June because I did a June NetGalley vlog. So I did already talk about A Shadow in Moscow by Catherine Ray. Loved this story. In it, we follow 2 female spies, a young woman and an older woman who are in Moscow at 2 different timelines, but in Moscow spying for America, for the CIA, and their stories, and takes place in Cold War Russia, which is an interesting time to read about as well. I really enjoyed that one. I have 3 other NetGalley books that were in that vlog. Everything's Coming Up Rosie by Courtney Walsh. I actually read that one right at the end of May. But the other 2 that I read in June are Worth Fighting For by Jessie Q. Sutanto. I was a little bit disappointed by this. It was a fun read while I was reading it, but really didn't love it. And then The Girl Who Kept the Castle by Ryan Groudon, which is a fun middle grade fantasy. I did enjoy that one. I don't think it's a new favorite or anything, but it was an interesting and fun story. The only other middle grade I read last month was Book Smugglers, The Book Smugglers by Anna James. This is the 4th book in the Pages & Co. series. In this one, we follow mostly Milo, who helps run the Quip with his uncle, and he is the main character of this one instead of Tilly and Oscar. I think his name is. But Tilly is in this one as well. So the Quip, the train that Milo lives on, is a train that uses imagination to travel through books and time. And his uncle, Horatio, is a book smuggler. Something happens right at the beginning where Tilly and Milo have to join together and kind of steal the Quip to go solve the situation, to fix the situation that has happened. So I can't talk too much about it because it is the fourth one in the series. It's a very imaginative series for book lovers. There's a lot of talk of books and different children's classics, and the possibilities are endless. And this one has to do a little bit with the Wizard of Oz. They visit the Emerald City in here, which is a lot of fun. I just really enjoy this series. I don't, again, think it's going to be a new favorite of all time, but I am really enjoying it. I read, I guess, two that could be considered classics. I read Kilmeny of the Orchard by Ella Montgomery. This was my book with green on the cover for the Amazing Readathon. It was not my favorite Ella Montgomery book. I think the main issue I had with this is that Kilmeny is mute. She's not deaf, but she doesn't speak and communicates through writing things down and in other ways, but a new school teacher comes to town. There's a bit of a romance between them. And I don't know, it's almost like until she's fixed, they're not going to progress their relationship. And I don't remember if it was Kilmeny. I think that was on Kilmeny's side. She wasn't going to continue on with this man until she was fixed. The representation of her disability wasn't my favorite. It didn't sit well with me. It made me a little uncomfortable. So this was not my favorite, Kilmeny of the Orchard, but I do enjoy reading Ella Montgomery books. There's a lot about her descriptions of things and the way she writes about nature that I do really love. So that part of her writing I did really enjoy, but the story of Kilmeny herself I didn't care for. And the other classic that I read was an Agatha Christie, At Bertram's Motel, is a Miss Marple mystery. I did really enjoy this. Miss Marple wasn't incredibly involved with solving the mystery. She was helpful towards the end, but it wasn't like she was out there trying to get all the clues. So it was a little bit different. It takes place in London. One of the guests shows up at the airport on the wrong day. I honestly don't remember too much about this one. I do remember having a good time while I was reading it. I didn't think the mystery was very high stakes. I wasn't on the edge of my seat intensely reading it. It just was a fun read, but ultimately forgettable because here we are at the end of the month. And I know that's on me. I could have done a little more research to look it up and everything, but it didn't stand out to me that much, even while reading it. It was just a fun, quick read. One that I was a little bit disappointed in was A Psalm for the Wild Bill. Not that I was disappointed. I did enjoy this. I just didn't enjoy this as much as I was hoping to enjoy it. This is by Becky Chambers. In this, we follow a tea monk named Dex, and Dex is not sure serving tea and helping people in that way is what he wants to do. He wants a little bit more adventure in his life. So one day he just kind of takes off into the wilderness. Well, in this world, it's been centuries since robots were a part of the world, and robots and humans kind of came to an agreement, and all the robots went off into the wilderness as well. So Dex, on his adventure in the wilderness, comes across a robot named Mosscap, and Mosscap and Dex have a lot of philosophical discussions as they are wandering through the wilderness, and it helps Dex to figure out a little bit more about what he wants and who he is. And Mosscap is just wanting to discover how he can be of help and how he wants to learn more about humanity. And they have interesting conversations. It was pretty slow paced, very cozy. I did enjoy reading it. I just was hoping to love it and want to just give it a big hug at the end, and I just didn't feel that way about it, and that's okay. It was a sweet little cozy sci-fi fantasy. Psalm for the Wild Bill. There you have it. It was just meh. I have 3 left. So I read a book that's been on my TBR for a really long time. The girls that I meet with in person, one of our challenges was to read a book. We had 2 challenges because we didn't meet in June. So we're going to meet at the end of July. And so we had to read a book that involves time, and I read For a Lifetime, and we had to read a book that's been on our shelves for a really long time. And so I picked up The Haunting of Maddie Clare. This also fulfilled a violent word in the title for the Amazing Readathon, because haunting can be pretty violent. And in this book, the ghostie is a little bit violent at times. So we follow this young woman who is a temp. She doesn't have a full-time job, but she temps for a ghost hunter. at one point. She gets a job through her temp office to go help this ghost hunter take notes, dictation, all of that. But she gets wrapped up much more in this case of this ghost, Maddie Clare, that lives in a barn on this farm. And Maddie, the ghost, is a bit mischievous and likes to cause a lot of trouble and really doesn't like men. So Sarah is the one who is allowed to go into the barn and try to talk to Maddie and figure out why she's there and ultimately help her to move on into the light or whatever. It is, in typical Simone St. James fashion, pretty creepy, pretty intense. There were some jump scare moments, as she always manages to do with me. And it was not my favorite Simone St. James book, but I did enjoy it. Maddie got pretty violent at times. There was a romance in this story as well that I didn't feel connected to and didn't feel was really necessary to the plot at all. Alistair, the ghost hunter, has his previous assistant had left for a bit, but when he found out about this case that they were working on, he comes back into the picture. And both Alistair and his previous assistant are pretty scarred from a war. When does this take place? 1920s in England. So it's a bit historical as well. I did enjoy it. I'm glad that I read it because I'm about close to reading all of Simone St. James's books. So I'm glad that I read it, but I do like some of her newer stuff a bit better than this one. I will probably be selling this on Pango. I think I ended up giving it 3 stars. On my drive up to New York, when I went up to visit my mom, I listened to The Lights of Sugarberry Cove by Heather Weber. This is one that was on my Flip and Roll TBR. So I'm glad that I read this one. It's a family drama with a little bit of magical realism. If you like Sarah Addison Allen, which I do, you'll probably like Heather Weber too. And I'm glad that I'm discovering that because I have quite a few. I have a few more Heather Weber books on my shelves. But there is a bit of magical realism in this. So we're following 2 sisters. Sadie is our main character, I would say. Sadie has been avoiding coming home to Sugarberry Cove for 8 years. She almost died in the lake there and miraculously survived. And to escape kind of being the focus of everybody's attention, takes off to try to figure out why was she saved? Why was her life special enough to save by the lady in the lake? So that's the magical element. There is this lady in the lake legend that exists. And so Sadie has gone off and done her own thing, and she's become a content creator, a food content creator, making recipes with people and learning their stories and sharing it on the internet. Reminds me a bit about Lasagna Means I Love You, the middle grade, where the young girl in that one does the same type of thing. Sadie does that and has a huge following, is very popular with her Southern charm. Leela is Sadie's sister, and Leela feels a lot of guilt about that time 8 years ago when Sadie fell in the lake. We don't really know why she's feeling guilty about it, but Sadie and Leela both come home because their mom has a heart attack. She doesn't die, but she has a heart attack, and so they both come home for a little bit to help out around the inn that she's running, which is kind of losing money rapidly and stuck in its old ways. And so the girls decide they're going to try to spruce up the inn a little bit. There are other family members that are all living right there too. It's kind of this big family, and there's a legend about the lady in the lake. And as layers of the story get unfolded, there's a bit of a romance in there as well. I would call it cozy and definitely a family drama. Coming back together, working through some misunderstandings about each other. There is a bit of found family, I guess, as well, with some of the guests that come to the inn year after year. And I just thought it was really lovely. It wasn't super fast paced, but I was invested all the way through. I'm giving this one 4 stars, and it was a lot of fun. And the final book that I read last month was Some Like It Scott by Pepper Basham. I will be probably talking about this more in my NetGalley reading vlog because it was a NetGalley book, but I don't think it came out in July. But I will include it in the NetGalley vlog because I will write the review for it. Anyways, I'll just say here that it was a fun story. I listened to it on my way back to Virginia from New York. It was a fun car ride read because I didn't need to think about it very much. In it, we follow a very tall young woman who is a travel writer for a online travel magazine. And her column is called Miss Adventures because she's tends to be clumsy and get herself into some crazy predicaments. She's really good at writing about it and is funny and heartwarming. She is one of the influencers who is invited to this Scottish castle where this woman is hoping to start this Edwardian experience where people come and you dress in costume for a week and you get to learn how to use a fan and ride horses and play croquet on the lawn and have this Edwardian experience. And so she's going to experience it as a sample and then write about it and hopefully get more people to come. Right at the beginning, there's just a silly scene. She shows up at the castle. People are chasing this macaw bird, this parrot, around the castle. She kind of falls through the railing and a guy falls with her, this tall, beautiful Scottish man. So they don't hit it off right away, but it's a romance and it's fun. So you can kind of see where it's going right from the beginning. But I am a big fan of Scotland. I'm a big fan of a tall man who's buff and wears a kilt occasionally and speaks with a Scottish accent. I was down for the story. It was sweet and fun, not very high stakes at all with anything. It just was a delightful rom-com to read. Pepper Basham is a Christian fiction author, so it did have some light faith elements in there as well. It didn't get too heavy with the faith content, but both of our main characters have a love for the Lord that is included in the story a bit. Their faith wasn't on any kind of rocky ground. It was just a part of who they are, which I enjoyed. It was a nice, sweet romance, nothing more than a kiss. It was beautiful. It was just really nice to read, but her banter was fun. And like, I could feel the romantic tension between them a little bit. I really enjoyed it. It was a good time. And I love a tall, not petite, not tiny little girl. She was a tall girl with curves, and I just really love that representation in stories because she was strong and beautiful and funny and kind. And I love that that's how she was represented. So that was a lot of fun. Fun way to end my month. And that is it. I believe that was 21 books. It was a great reading month. I'm really happy with my reading in June. I'm so glad I finished up a few projects, made some progress in some series. Let me tell you what's going in my favorites basket. Soon I will be sharing what's in my favorites basket for the first half of the year, and I might clear it out, leave it stacked somewhere, and start fresh for July. And then at the end of the year, I'll have to decide between all of the favorites that made it into the basket what ones are going to be my favorites of the year. But from June, I'm going to add For a Lifetime, even though I don't own it. I'm going to put a little post-it in there for a Lifetime from the Timeless series. I just really, really enjoy it. Sneak peek to my 5-star predictions. I'm going to be putting Theo of Golden into the basket. A Shadow in Moscow by Catherine Ray. Really loved that. The God of the Woods by Liz Moore. And Ember in the Ashes by Sabata here. So all 5 of those will be going into the basket. That's pretty good. Out of a month where I read 21 books, that 5 of them are going into my potential favorites of the year basket. I am not at all ranking them at this point. They're just ones that stand out to me as ones that could be a favorite of the year, and I'm just going to put them in the basket. We'll see what happens at the end of the year. All right, that is it for me today. I would love to hear which books were your favorites in the month of June. Did you read anything that surprised you, that was out of the blue, that you ended up really liking? Anything that you need to put on my radar that you read? I love getting your recommendations and chatting with you in the comments. I really appreciate all of you so much, and I look forward to chatting with you in another video very soon. Bye.